the fact that amongst J. Serra's escort into our California were not only the Don Gaspar de Portola that all the kids know about, but a Catalonian guard, those boys from in and around Barcelona, is significant. Because Catalonia had just declared its independence from Spain. Now, it's important that we understand that at a time when these events occurred, no one in a world dominated by European superpowers, no one other than royalty owned anything. Be you an Indian, or in J. Serra's case, a Spanish subject of the subject of the Spanish crown. You owned nothing. Now, Serra would prove the exception here because he was a Franciscan and had taken a vow of poverty and never intended owning anything anyway. But having said that, a nobleman like Don Gaspar de Portola would have received a patent or a franchise to develop a tract of land or an estate or what have you, but only if he remained loyal to the monarchy. And that patent would have to be renewed by each successive generation. The only difference between the Barcelona boys marching into our California as J. Serra's escort and, say, those boys with whom we are perhaps more familiar, the boys sitting in council at this exact same time back in Philadelphia, was the fact that the boys from Barcelona were decidedly Catholic. Right? While yet in pursuit of what Englishman John Locke referred to and Tom Jefferson tweaked as life, liberty, and the pursuit of real estate. That's how the line originally went. Now forget about noblemen for a minute. At this point in world history, if you were not a recognized subject of, say, the British, or in California's case, the Spanish crown, you had absolutely no rights whatsoever. Catalonians wanted what the boys in Philadelphia wanted, and they wanted it the same thing for this, their new arena of occupation, California. They did not want utopian missions as envisioned by J. Serra. And why, you might ask? Because missions sought through baptism and confirmation to make of Indians not only Catholics, but recognized subjects of the crown, aka players. Now, without said recognition, an Indian had absolutely no rights whatsoever. He might just as well have been a Muslim or a Jew. They had no rights whatsoever. All right, that was the world in which these people inhabited. We need to remember that. This would leave recognized subjects of the crown. And you know these stories, you learned these back in 4th grade without any of this background and detail. That left recognized subjects of the crown at liberty to claim and exploit and defend acquisitioning, in California's case, the infidels, or the Indians, but whatever the unfaithful person was, their properties. And because they were not recognized by either the church or the king, and therefore they were without a voice in court. And I think it's safe to say that in 1769, the Catalonians marching into California were not advocating for California Indian rights. But again, the difference between the boys in Philadelphia and those boys from Barcelona was the fact that the latter were decidedly Catholic. Therefore, perhaps more out of concern for their own souls, they felt compelled to see the Indians baptized, i.e., in their terminology, saved from hell's fire and damnation. Now, this is their mindset. They did not, on the other hand, want an Indian confirmed. In fact, forestalling Serra's every effort to complete confirmations. And why? Because if J. Serra baptized and confirmed an Indian, that Indian would become a recognized subject, acknowledged by both majesties. Who are both majesties? God, which for all practical purposes was the Pope, and the king, in our case in California, King Charles III of Spain. So, confirmed recognition by the same God and the king as legitimate subjects delivered unto an Indian the same rights as another faithful subject, no longer an infidel. Now, yes, I can say, well, but why would I have to be Catholic? In this world, you had to be Catholic, or you had no say-so whatsoever. I would have been exed immediately, or I would have converted as many people did. So it was that every effort was being made by independent operators to forestall J. Serra's installation of missions. And again, why? Because were such installed, the converted indigenous peoples of the Americas could themselves lay claim as loyal subjects of both majesties to their own lands. Now, to empower American Indians with the same rights that he himself could command as a Roman Catholic subject of the Spanish Empire remained as one of Dr. Serra's primary objectives. Remember, before you judge here, remember that his world is not our world. His world is one that is ruled by popes and kings. There exists no sense of individual rights or equality. There is no United States of America, although such is concurrently in the process of becoming. With that understanding then, understand J. Serra's mission remaining one of not only getting you to God's throne as he saw it, but of leveling the playing field here on earth. Dare I say that in 1769, the only person marching into California advocating for Indian rights was Father Junipero Serra. Dr. Serra was a brilliant intellectual, and you have to be one if you ever hope to understand him. Even as Tom Jefferson laid down in writ a Declaration of Independence, J. Serra, having raced back to Mexico City from San Diego, I want to throw in, I forgot to do this, one of my favorite J. Serra quotes. I want to share two of them at this point. First of all, he said, "I told the truth, and so they took away my force." Follow? You're not going anywhere, buddy. You're going to go out there and tell the truth. That's what this work is all about. And second of all, he raced back to Mexico City from San Diego. He said to his companion, Francisco at the time, "I wish that I could fly." His native Majorca put that on a stamp. I love that. That says a lot about him and who he was. I wish that I could fly. Serra flew back to Mexico City, which is to say that he wasn't on JetBlue. He got down there as quick as he could to sort out the fact that his installation of every mission was being forestalled or contained on site. One of my favorite stories from Bernardo Yorba, who was a friend of mine and a direct descendant of one of those Catalonian boys from outside of Barcelona, was the story that his family shared about when their great-great-great-grandfather showed up in Monterey. Now, every fourth grader knows this story. But the story they know goes something to the effect that the Catalonian commander, Portola, did not recognize the Bay of Monterey. You've all heard that. We've all heard that. We're all California historians in here. So embellished had its description become, we are told. And so he insisted that they march further on, and they stumbled upon the stupendous Bay of San Francisco. Well, Bernardo Yorba, my pal, tells a different story, and the Catalonian descendant story I found recounted in Bancroft. And most of you in this room are familiar with his tomes and the things that his team put together on California. Fourth grade curriculum aside, Portola was ordered not to identify Monterey. Having just gotten rid of the missionaries in Baja California, players were frustrated to find J. Serra showing up to continue carrying a missionary's torch into Alta California. A decision was made not to deliver the missionary supplies, and those of you who know this story know that their supply shipping never arrived until there was a rescue effort to secure more supplies, to run the missionaries around and then send them packing. That was the agenda. Now, Portola, standing on the shores of Monterey Bay, stated that he couldn't see it. J. Serra was busy in San Diego, burying the dead and caring for the dying. His on-site companion at Monterey, Father Juan Crespi, talked about and wrote about the Catalonians' inexplicable hallucination, and slamming the cross into the sand dunes adjacent, he said something to the effect that, "Fine, I dedicate this bay, which does not exist, to Jesus Christ." I love that. I don't care if I'm even if I'm Jew or Muslim or whatever. I just love that, and that tenacity. All right, I'm respecting your idiotic situation here. This is my reality. It was precisely because of this and numerous similar incidents that J. Serra had flown back to Mexico City, where he now sat down to compose what he referred to as a bill of particulars. And you will find all of this in this work too. I want to share that. This is a very unusual tome. And I have had all kinds of challenges thrown at me, just trying to have this fair, open discussion about these issues, because as you can well imagine, there are agendas all over the place trying to shut this discussion up. A bill of particulars is what Serra called it. Now again, remember, I'm not Catholic, I'm just talking about another Californian in all of California. The Vatican would later proclaim it as an American Indian Bill of Rights. Now, Serra would present this bill to the Viceroy, together with the trunk made out of California redwood, containing exquisite baskets, wood carving, and rock art, all the manufacture of Californians, and an elephant's tooth. And I love this, if you're into zoological things like what we've done in elephant San Diego in the last 2 years, Serra insisted there were elephants here. Now, the zoo will tell you, 10,000 years ago they were gone. John Johnson at the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History say they were gone by 3,500 years. But there must have been a random elephant or something running around here, or at least the people were still talking about him. But at any rate, I'm off topic there. But I'm just saying, setting down, he wrote down with that beautiful gift he presented, he set down in writ clearly and with as much brevity as possible whatever points an equal right advocate considered necessary in order to defend the rights of American Indians. Serra's 32 provisos plus an addendum look like one thing to someone without the background that you and I have just shared, and yet they are indeed another. Not a mere to-do list. They are the very hammers, nails, and boards of a bulwark that was being constructed to protect American Indians in California from the world of commercial enterprises and political intrigue fast crashing down all around them. They would assure the successful installation of Indian missions. Now, remember what's going on here and why that would have been important to him as a means to an end. Serra's Bill of Particulars was completed and signed on March 13, 1773. One copy of it has been in California since his day. When last I heard, it was at the Franciscan Archives in Santa Barbara, where I've done a lot of my research. I was only shown a photocopy of it, but I assume it's still there, or perhaps up in Berkeley at the American Franciscan Academy of Franciscan Studies, or whatever that is. In this document, J. Serra, a disciple of Utopian John Donne's, made every effort to speak plainly so that even the most simple-minded bureaucrat might understand. Now, this is a man who was, colleagues of his said that his lectures were worthy of being written in letters of gold. He wrote this like you put the stamp over here and you do this over here. In this document, Dr. Serra, disciple of the document formed the basis of the first significant legislation, if you will, for our early California. Legislation that would affect Indians, of course, soldiers, military commanders, sailors, post office officials, missionaries, would-be immigrants, Serra's Missionary College, the Royal Palace, and a Masonic-driven Council of the Indies facilitating those Catalonians. I'm not saying any of these people are bad, I'm just sharing with you what was going on, okay? Ultimately, all but 3 particulars would be endorsed and signed into law by the Viceroy, who then saw to the complete annexation of California from a just established political entity compromised by the designs of independent operators like Portola. Now, some in this room, and as from our perspective coming from a background on the other side of the continent, would view gentlemen like Portola as perhaps a freedom fighter. But I dare say this, a freedom fighter nonetheless, from whom, as in English America, not one Indian would have been spared.